very surprised by that. And I think that what we are suffering right now in America and every single local entity is a lack of involvement, a lack of understanding, total lack of transparency in government. I'm really tired of that. I mean, you can't even figure out how our Board of Supervisors votes on any topic. You have to go dig through the minutes of each meeting to find out how those votes were cast.
There's nothing online where we could go check?
You can, just the way I just said. You have to go into each meeting and then look through the minutes and see how the vote was cast. In this day and age when you should just be able to go and find out in a snap, you should have an app on your phone and you could find out how all your local officials vote. And I think it's important. I think that we just need more transparency in government. And, it sounds easy, but it's not easy because government typically is not on the cutting edge of a lot of technology. That's one of our issues. And so, the business world is moving at a more rapid pace, or the other parts of our society are moving more rapidly. So when you have government that's saddled with old technology or things that are out of date, that can be a struggle. So I'm running because, I'd like to advocate for more voice from the people, and that means organizing people. So I think part of my job is really to inspire others to become organized. If there's a neighborhood that is in need of something, if there are people that are in need of something, they need to organize. It's the only way to really get attention. And
what can you do to facilitate that?
Well, even at my house parties, going out, I had never really done that kind of thing, but I worked long and hard on agritourism and on arts and culture, and I learned that if you don't get a certain nucleus of people together to try to affect change, nothing's going to happen. So you have to get that core group of folks together, and they have to be dedicated and passionate about what it is that they want changed. And when they are, it will change.
Squeaky wheel gets oiled.
Absolutely,
Have you read the Indivisible guide?
Actually, someone gave me that, yes. Yeah.
For listeners who don't know about it, some former staffers for Congress members put together a guide for how to influence your congressperson. And they said local politics is what counts, because local politicians want your vote, so they'll listen to you. Yeah. And they give all, you can download it free. And there's a lot of other guides that I'm finding for how to organize. There's a group I just came across called Popular Resistance, and they're having a free online school that starts May 1st where they're going to teach people how to organize. And it's free.
I think that formal organizing is good, and it's good practice for all of us to get together, but really I think it has to be a little more regular than that. For instance, with the idea of neighborhood watch, I would rather see us get together as neighborhoods again. And usually when I go to these house parties, I'll say, how many in this room know one another? And maybe one hand will go up, or two hands. They're all from the same neighborhood, but they don't know each other, or they've only seen each other. So what that tells me is we just have a lack of connection in our community. We are divided.
And how do we overcome that?
We have to start getting together, walk our neighborhoods, have good old-fashioned neighborhood Saturday barbecues, get to know one another. Usually how we come together is when there's crisis. But wouldn't it be nice to be ready when there's crisis, because you already have relationship?
Well, I'm wondering if there's some way that you two as supervisors could facilitate that in a structured way, starting neighborhood groups.
I think there is. I think in my mind, I already am in my district, because I just see such a lack of, that what they're doing is they try to organize around a crisis, but by that time it's too late. If it's already going before the Board of Supervisors, you can bet that there's been months of pre-planning on whoever it is that's lobbying the Board of Supervisors. It's pretty baked by the time it gets before the officials. So if you aren't part of that, would you agree with that statement, Tami?
Probably, yeah. One of the things that I think people don't understand about government is that you're not going to show up at a meeting and get your topic addressed. You can maybe get 3 minutes on the floor, but it has to be something that was not previously talked about on the agenda, or that's a violation. They're not allowed to talk about something that's been talked about already. And so for a lot of people, I think it's understanding how government works. How do you get to be an agendized item? And in order to do that, you have to know your representatives, you have to know your council people, or you have to know your supervisors, so that you can help them understand why this issue is important and why it should be agendized and why we need a community discussion on it. And so I think that there's a lot of education that has to take place in order for people to be able to make the changes that they want to make. One of the things that I see that's really important with the supervisor role is that District 3 is a really spread out district, and it includes Forest Ranch and Cohasset. And typically the supervisor has office hours during the day in Chico. And so as supervisor, one of the things that I'm going to do is make sure that I have office hours that are in the evenings in these places, so that people who are working can actually have access to their elected representative.
That's great. That's a great idea.
What about the concept of having some kind of structured way to organize neighborhoods that you to facilitate somehow?
Right. Well, I think that there is right now. We have, I mean, social media is incredible, and we have Next Door Neighbor, and I know I'm connected with a number of people in my neighborhood just through that app, and it's been one of the best ways for me to find out what's going on in my neighborhood, or if someone in my neighborhood needs help, or we've even used it in my neighborhood. Somebody needed to borrow my toilet snake, and so I mean it's from the most basic things of borrowing household tools to finding out if somebody's dog is missing, and really getting to know the people you're surrounded by.
I would like to hear what our two young organizers think about organizing and what it's taken to really do what you both have done.
That's on the list.
Yeah.
Well, before we talk, I just want to make sure that we have all of our information together. Kailyn is not a high school student. She goes to college at Chico State. Also, I'm not a woman. I'm a non-binary person. My pronouns are they, them. Just a heads up.
Thanks. So yeah, what about that question? Why are you organizing?
Well, I have a lot to say. And I really value when other people's voices are heard, and I think it's really important that everybody's voices are heard. So organizing the past events that I've been involved with and being able to empower other people has been really nice. I'm also really passionate about gun violence. So,
but what motivated you? What got you to be a person who's willing to speak out and walk out of class and do those kind of things?
Because nobody else will. It's just kind of gotten to that point where things are so outrageous that somebody needs to stand up and take control and get other people involved and stuff.
What's been the most outrageous for you? What was it? Were you active before the Parkland shooting?
Yeah. Something that was really, really outrageous to me was the 2016 election. That was really crazy. That was kind of my introduction into social activism. I worked crowd control when Bernie came to Chico, and I was like, this man is my idol. And then another really outrageous thing that happened was the Dakota Access Pipeline. As a Native person, seeing something so terrible built on sacred land was something really, really crazy to me, and that was when I really realized that this is how I'm going to spend my time.
What do your parents, your family think about your activism?
Well, my mom's pretty supportive. My dad is kind of a gun-loving old white man. So there's that. But they realize that I have a voice and that I have the right to have my voice heard, so it works.
That's pretty awesome.
So you're at Inspire?
I am, yes.
And you're a junior?
I'm a junior.
And what happens when you graduate?
Well, I've taken the exit exam this year, so I'm hoping that I won't have to go back next year. I find out on April 20th if I passed, and my plan is to go to Butte College and stay really informed and get more involved when I'm not in high school.
And major in what?
Definitely major in sustainability.
And that's a major. I mean, it's not environmentalism; it's sustainability.
I'm really interested in environmentalism, but sustainability is the path that I want to take. I've been super involved with science and engineering for the majority of my school life.
So you would approach it from the science, technological aspects of sustainability in your studies,
Yeah,
and maybe be an engineer.
maybe. I definitely want to focus on the changing part of sustainability and really enforce sustainable alternatives to things, and kind of work with that sort of thing.
Great. Kailyn, what about you? Why are you a person who's not afraid to stand in front of a large group of people and speak out?
Well, I'm a theater arts major, so that's never really been a problem. The whole idea of stage fright was not something that was an issue for me. I've always had very opinionated thoughts on things. You can ask my dad. He loves it when I come home with thoughts on things. In regards to gun violence, it was one of those things where it's I remember going to high school and I remember going to elementary school and running lockdowns, and then by the time I was a senior in high school, it was a joke, having to run lockdowns. Everyone knew that it was not realistic, this idea of lock the door and hide behind a desk, that's not going to do much for you. And then I got to college and kind of was okay, well, I'm an adult now. If I don't feel safe, I can leave. I've got more options. And then Parkland happened, and I started to think, I have a younger brother, and I was thinking, he does not have the same advantages that I do, where if I don't want to be somewhere, I can just go. He has to still be there. And for me, it's a crazy thought that I have to be, one of the biggest fears in my life is sending my younger brother to high school to get a mandated education. And so I got involved for that, and also because I am still a student, so it does affect me on some level. I would say that it probably affects high school students more than it does college students, not to belittle any of the events that have happened on college campuses, but statistically it does happen on high school campuses more frequently. And even though I'm not a high schooler, like I said, I've got a brother that's in high school, just starting his high school career, and I don't want him to have to think about this as he's trying to grow into his own, and I don't want it to ever be an experience that he has to go through. The younger generations nowadays take on a lot. We see it with more than just gun reform. We see it with the LGBTQ plus community. We see it with trans rights. We see it with all kinds of with climate change, like what you were talking about earlier. The youth has really taken on this mantle of well, if you're not going to do it, we'll do it. And while I want him to be informed and educated and have a voice, I don't want it to come from a place of fear.
The Parkland students, everybody is amazed. Someone said, they like these master PR people who know how to take on Laura Ingraham by targeting her advertisers. They know how to appear on national TV and write editorials for the New York Times. What do you think there is about your generation that makes you so savvy, so brave, so willing to tackle the establishment?
I think it comes from a lot of different things. I think part of it stems from my generation, and the generation right behind me has grown up, most of us have grown up in the digital age, so we're very familiar with how this stuff works. It comes to us naturally. I don't know how to play jacks, but I assume somebody that grew up in the age where jacks was a thing that you played with your friends would know how to do that. The same kind of thought, I guess, translates to social media and using technology. If you grow up with it, you're familiar with it, you can understand the changes and follow it. So in that way, I can see how they're good at what they do. Part of it is everyone seems to forget they're still high school students. So this whole idea of being politically correct and polite is not going to fly with them, especially after going through something so intense. They're not willing to kind of to edit their thoughts on things, which makes for really powerful statements, like what we see with Laura. She made a mistake in saying what she said, and the Parkland students were like, "That's my friend. You can't say those things about my friend."
For listeners, what happened is Laura Ingram on Fox said that David Hogue was a whiner because he posted on Twitter that he'd been rejected by UCLA and UC San Diego. And then the students went to work and over 12 advertisers dropped her show. I mean, just like that. Powerful.
Which is amazing. I remember when I was applying to colleges, it's easily one of the most stressful experiences you'll have in your young adult life. It kind of determines what you're going to do from that point forward, whether or not you get into college. So I got rejected from my number one school. I mean, I'm very happy with the school that I go to now, but I won't pretend like my soul wasn't crushed a little bit when I was rejected from that school. So I can understand him saying, "Oh, didn't get into another one. That's life for you." You know, it's very much like that is something that my senior class, when they didn't get in somewhere, it was on Twitter. So people are acting like it's abnormal for him to complain about this, when really it's not complaining, it's just him being transparent and sharing his experience.
He's just reporting important news in his life. Yeah, he wasn't whining. Evan, do you want to say a word about why your generation is so savvy, effective, out there, brave, courageous? Or is it just a tiny percent that we hear about?
I think that I am definitely one of the younger activists out there. Like, I'm only 16. I'm the youngest person in my junior class. I think that what Kailyn was saying about, like, just knowing how to use social media effectively and just knowing how to use social media effectively has been, like, a huge part in helping us plan things. Like, we planned the walkout and a town hall meeting that happened recently, and both of those were all over social media, and that's, like, our main way of getting people's attention.
How many people showed up at the town hall about? Did you fill the auditorium, the El Rey?
We did not fill it. We filled our first little section. We had about 215 people.
Did you get any feedback at all from Lamalfa's office?
Do you want to answer that?
Of course I do. Well, so...
Speaking of tech savvy.
Yeah. So we got a hold of Lamalfa and tried to contact Lamalfa in almost every way possible. We sent him emails, we tagged him on posts in social media, we asked him if he was going to be joining us, we called his office, we used his site, and when we heard back from his office, they said they never got an invitation. And we were like, really? But it's okay.
Yeah, if you've ever been on Lamalfa's site, there's a tab you can click on that says Contact Me.
Right.
And then some sub-tabs that you can click on to kind of direct you to, like, what it is you want to contact him about. We wanted him to speak at an event, so we clicked the Speak at an Event tab. And we sent him an email. We sent him 3 different emails through his website. Never got a response back, and we kind of assumed that we were just being ignored. So then, we gave it about a day or two. And after that, we were like, okay, well, we're just going to blast you online because you won't acknowledge us. So Facebook, Twitter, I think some people on Instagram too, everywhere, on our personal accounts, on the Never Again account, everywhere we were like, are you coming? Where are you? Why aren't you answering us? I'm of voting age, so I'm one of his constituents. He should be concerned with what I'm thinking, not to discredit, the younger folks on our committee, but, I can not vote for him. So I thought, well, maybe if I really get out there, he'll listen. Nope. I called his office. And I was bounced around from a couple different offices until I got a phone call back. Actually, I got a voicemail back saying that the offices hadn't heard of us, that they hadn't gotten an invitation, and that he had agreed to a different congressional event And then we found out that this congressional event, we're still, some of us are still laughing at it because it's interesting to categorize this as a congressional event. He went to a Little League baseball game, which it's nice to show your support for Little League, but I don't know that that counts as a congressional event. In my mind, a congressional event is something like, say, a town hall for our lives. But I could be wrong. So.
You could be. I'm going to ask Tami next about, is the blue wave going to reach red Butte County? But first, we need to thank our sponsors. So if you would like to pledge, tomorrow's the last day. Now's a good time. Call 895-0131. Ask Dr. Gale is made possible by the generous contributions of KZ, about our supporters, and by Friends of the Arts. We have her right here. A state local partner to the California Arts Council. Since 2001, Debra Lucero, who's right here, and Friends of the Arts have been creating economic opportunity through arts and culture by producing community festival and events, including Oktoberfest, the True North Tour, the NorCal Jazz Festival, the Salmon Festival, and more. To learn about Friends of the Arts, visit friendsoftheartsupstate.org. And Ask Dr. Gale is made possible by Oak Ridge Cabinets, Northern California's full-service manufacturer of custom cabinets since 1981. Oak Ridge Cabinets offers cabinet design and manufacturing for your home or office at 11128 Midway in Durham. More information is available by calling 893-8774 and at oakridgecabinets.com. So reminder that call for the pledge drive, 895-0131, and Ask Dr. Gale is on the second Thursday of each month. Next Thursday we'll have a total panel of youth activists. And then May is going to be women's health, and June is going to be how to solve the Palestinian-Israeli issue.
Oh, goodness. It's going to be a long show.
Yeah. I want to tackle it. Tami, what do you think about that? Is there hope for a blue wave that's spreading across the country, reaching red Butte County?
Sure, there's hope, and we were blue for a while, but we're now red again. A little over 400 registered voters. So I'd love to see that turn around again, particularly before the June election. But, you know, this is a big county, and it's spread out, and it's rural, and so I think that regardless of whether this is a blue county or a red county, I still think that we can get the candidates that we want and the candidates that we need.
Are you hopeful? Again, could you tie this into the women's wave? It's not only a blue wave in 2018, but a wave of women candidates who are running and winning. How do you place yourself in those two waves?
Well, I ran first in 2012, so I guess if this was the first time I ran, I might see myself more as part of a particular movement. This is just how I choose to participate in community, so I don't necessarily see myself as part of that particular movement. I don't know who the new registered voters are. I don't know if more of our progressive voters are women. I haven't seen the statistics, so I don't know necessarily how that translates in Butte County. I am definitely encouraged to see more people aware and involved and getting out there, and especially seeing young people and the incredible events that they've created and that they're continuing to kind of spearhead. That's encouraging to me, and I guess against all other facts and reason, I'm still optimistic.
A lot of studies show that women in office tend to be more responsive to their constituents. They deliver more, they talk less, they produce more. Things like childcare and traditional family supports happen more often. Have you seen that in your political career? Are women any different or more effective or less so in terms of getting things done than their male colleagues?
I don't know if I necessarily have seen specifically what you're talking about. I definitely see challenges to being a woman in politics that are not there for men in politics. For example, my first year on council, I had to pump breast milk in a dirty bathroom during council meetings. So that's certainly a challenge, you know, and childcare moms being the primary providers most of the time. But I think that there's just different expectations sometimes. I never ever heard any of my male colleagues be told to smile, which is something I was told that I should smile on the dais. So there's different challenges that I think are just inherent to the current power structures that exist in our society. So
Yeah. Deborah, do you want to take that? Have you observed any difference in the way women approach politics, leadership than men? Are they more effective, or is that not accurate from what you've seen?
Well, I think that we are coming to it a little. There's obviously some standouts, you know, but they're few in terms of women on the national scale that made an impact. But like for myself, I just put my last kid through college, and it was kind of like my time now that I felt I could give back in this way. So I do think that women have more of a challenge in that we haven't been involved in how politics really works sometimes. And the truth,
smoke-filled rooms.
I mean, that what you hear like that, the smoke, it's really true, you know, or going and playing golf. Like I have time to play golf. You know, and go
Right.
and, you know, be out there and make a deal on the golf course. You know, I don't have that kind of time, but that's where a lot of these things get decided. But I wanted to go back to the blue wave and red wave and all of that, because I want the listeners to really understand what's going on in our district. Tami's District 3, I'm District 2. That really encompasses most of Chico. And we have about 25,000 voters. It's very similar in both districts. We have about 25,000 voters. But what is interesting is that we have less than 18% of the people that are eligible to vote actually voting in our districts. 18 to 20%. So when someone's elected, like my opponent was elected with about 12% of the vote. Okay, so when you start to look at those numbers and recognize that we are actually putting people into office,
That's important.
it's very important. And something I just learned also is, for instance, we were just getting ready to do a postcard, and because Chico State's in my district, there were about 400 or 500 names that bounced off of this list. And so when we started looking at what those names were, they were students who were living in halls on the campus. So what we had, it registered their room number, which you cannot deliver mail to students on campus without their room number, but apparently the address of the specific hall was not included. So I'm just wondering, you know, I actually have put this question to the registrar, just saying, are students getting their vote by mail ballots? You know, is this a flaw in the postal system when it goes through the system? I don't know, you know, but it was interesting to me. So there's so many ways people can become disenfranchised to vote, but I think one of them is just simply we're
Not sure.
unaware. We are unaware. We have one day, unless you are a vote by mail person receiving your ballot early, which this year they'll go out May 7th. And so by May 9th, people are going to begin voting. And the race that I'm in is going to be over June 5th, because it's just Larry and I. So when whoever gets 50% plus one vote, that's the winner. And there is no going to the general election. And Tami could also win depending on if anybody gets 50% of the vote plus one. So it's really dire that people vote. I can't even stress it. You know, people don't think that voting matters, but it matters tremendously. When the long-term supervisor lost to Larry Wall 8 years ago, she lost by 222 votes. So even if only 18% of the people are voting, 222 votes is a lot of votes when you look at that percentage.
Right.
So I wanted to get that out there. The only way we're
Yes.
going to do this, if you aren't registered to vote out there and you're listening, it is very simple today. You can go to the California Secretary of State and just type in registration. Online, they've made it very simple. That is one thing that is really nice this time around, is it's getting simpler and simpler to register. You can register when you register your car. I think there's when you turn 18, I think they automatically send you a ballot now to vote. Is that true?
Yeah, they send you a registration form. I think, I'm trying to remember, when I graduated high school, I think in our graduation packet they gave us registration forms.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. You can also register at the DMV. I remember something got messed up with my registration. Like, I don't know, I got sent my registration ballot twice, and then because I got it twice, it was like null and void. So I went to the DMV when I got my California ID. I just registered then. They just asked, do you want to register to vote? And I said yes. That was it.
Well, and I've been reading about also how we ended up voting on Tuesdays. And it comes from our agrarian background, because Sunday everybody would go to church, and then Monday was kind of this day where you kind of got back into the swing of things. So Tuesday was the day before farmers started going to market again on Wednesday.
Oh.
And so, the idea of voting on one day again is something I think that's antiquated, and it'd be nice to have 25 days of voting, or
Especially on a work day.
yeah, and also it's very difficult for people to get off work and do that. So I think that's a whole nother issue. Even though the polls are open till 8, it's still difficult.
I think the easiest solution is, we've got so many national holidays, why not make voting day a national holiday so everyone has work off, everyone's got school off.
Or just
It's
vote
pretty
on
easy.
Saturdays.
Vote whenever.
Well, I mean, there are cases like, so if you work for the university, I used to be a desk attendant, we work 24 hours. So if you work, you could work on a Saturday, and you could work, from 12 to 4, and then have a midday shift, and you're really tired. And the chances of a college student who just had school the day before, has worked from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m., has a midday shift, has homework to do, going to vote on a Saturday is pretty slim. I mean, I would go because I'm very politically involved, but some of my friends, like, that just wouldn't work for them. But if we wanted on a Tuesday, traditionally it's been on a Tuesday, pretty easy to just make it a national holiday so everyone has it off. It's mandated by the government.
Your generation traditionally is least likely to vote, really low voting turnout. The older you are, the most likely you're going to vote. So do you think that's going to change because of the Never Again movement? Are you hearing anything from your peers about, I'm going to vote?
I'm really hopeful that it will. Again, I think it stems back to the actual ability of a person to vote. So my personal school schedule is crazy. On Tuesdays, I have work and I have class. I'm in class all day. I get out of class at 6:15. In fact, shout out to my professor for letting me leave early to come here. And then I don't have a car. All I have is a bike. So if voting is on the other side of campus, I have to try and budget for an Uber. I have to try to carpool with people. But because I get out so late, no one is around. Everyone's gone and done their things for the day. So it is like what
Absentee
Debra-
ballot solves
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, I mean, like what Debra was saying, it's difficult. I would find a way because, like I said, I'm very involved, but for some of my peers, it's just, that's not the reality of the way their life works. And I mean, even if we did voting online, like my generation is so connected to the online world, that'd be so easy for us, sit down, if you're on the bus to go somewhere, like start your voting, and then when you get home, do whatever it is you need to do at home, and then finish voting. There's so many ways to make it accessible in this day and age that it's sort of ridiculous that there aren't more options.
And the one thing I would say that I'm missing is, because we are going to be going to vote by ballot entirely in this county soon. So you're not going to have an option to go to the polling place. That's what they want to do.
You mean absentee
voting, ballots. It will be the way that we're going to be voting because of cost. But I think that's sad, because I love going to the polling place and to talk to people and, just see, it's like a community event concept. And when I was in college, I actually voted about 3 doors down from where I currently live. And I remember the older woman, she was probably in her I was in college, so she looked like she was in her 80s or 90s, but I'm sure she was probably not that old. But she was the one that opened her home to all these voting people, all these strangers to come into her home and vote, which was amazing to me. And so I would be sad to lose that sense of community that I think a polling place actually provides.
And you can take your kids and they experience it.
Yeah, it's different, it's a community thing.
Evan, what are you hearing from your peers about voting? And are you working on getting out the vote?
So I know that when Chico High had their alternative walkout, they stayed on campus. I left campus, but they had early registration for their peers who are seniors. I know one of the history teachers at my school, Debbie Travers, shout out to her, she's an angel, love her. She keeps track of all the seniors who have registered to vote on a whiteboard, and it changes every year, and it's really cool to see, all my friends who are registered to vote. My junior class hasn't said anything about registering to vote, that's just not something they're into.
Because they can't do it yet.
Yeah, they're pretty young.
Yeah, we've been, along with the Parkland students, been pushing, it's a hashtag that's been trending on Twitter for a while now, hashtag register, educate, vote. And we push that a lot with our town hall. In fact, there's a picture of us floating around somewhere with a barcode that you can scan with your phone that'll take you to a registration form. So yeah, you should find it. It's on Twitter, on Facebook, it's floating around everywhere. We really like our faces to be places, in case anyone hasn't figured that out yet.
They're theater people.
I am, yeah.
I like seeing Michael Hawkins with an ironing board in front of the post office myself.
He's a local.
Love that ironing board. Come on.
Tami, just change the subject a little bit. Do you think that the Trump sexism, racism, nationalism, populism, craziness is fueling this resistance movement, the blue wave, the women's wave, and do you think there's a positive outcome, or is he doing so much damage that it'll take years to recover? What's your feeling about it?
Well, I definitely feel that that's part of the fuel, for sure, but I also think that there are things that are being made acceptable now that are absolutely unacceptable that previously we never would have tolerated. And because it is the leader of the free world, I won't refer to him as the president, because...
What kind of things are you thinking that we accept?
His misogynistic perspective, his anti-Semitism, his white nationalism, all of it is, it's abhorrent, and it's not who I think the vast majority of people who identify as Americans with American ideals see themselves as, yet he has emboldened this very destructive and narrow-minded portion of the population, and made it acceptable to say things that it is not acceptable to say.
I interviewed a African-American student at George Washington University, and she said she'd never heard this word before, but someone yelled out the N-word to her after Trump was elected. So that's a crude example of what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So do you think we'll be able to recoup, or are we suffering for...
Sure, we'll be able to recover when we get people into office who can reverse the damage that he's doing, people who can put the EPA back into place, people who can reinstate the rights of LGBTQ people who, have values that we support. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take us getting out there, getting our local representatives elected, the people who represent our values, and then as the local officials are elected, then we'll go on to the bigger offices and getting our state Assembly and Congress, and that's where the change is going to happen.
Do you have any idea why he's had a pretty consistent 39-40% approval rating in the face of the craziness?
I think because people haven't had their taxes done yet. Just the whole new tax plan. People are gonna start changing when they realize that this president is doing nothing for them.
So you think they supported him because they felt that he would?
Yes.
Yeah, I would just say too, I think that that government is just suffering in general from a trust perspective and a transparency perspective. And because of those things, and because of the, what we're finding right now with our institutions, they're being torn apart. And they are crumbling, not just our infrastructure, but our very institutions are
like
facing...
attacking the FBI.
Well, I mean, I don't even mean that. I just mean locally. We are, I just sat through a meeting and we can't even repair our roads. Our roads in Chico have like a 57 rating out of 100. That's how bad they are. They aren't, they're just above mediocre. And just to keep them, mediocre is going to be $7 to $10 million a year. To keep them mediocre. And how much do we have? We have like $1 to $2 million a year. We have serious issues, really serious. I mean, roads are serious if you're riding a bike, because when you hit a pothole, it's
you
not,
feel it.
You do. And so I guess what I'm saying is that we have to do something different in government. We can't continue to govern the same way we've been governing for 150 years and expect different things to happen.
So specifically, like not having Citizens United where corporations...
No, that's crazy.
What are you thinking that needs to be done differently?
Well, we just have to start, just like everybody's been saying here, it starts locally. We have to stand up. People have to get involved. And so that's why I'm so happy to see young people really taking this mantle on, because that gives me a lot of hope for the generations after that, and for also pushing the people above them to act. Because we have to act. No more placating, no more punting, no more, we'll take care of that later. And I see that all the time in politics. I see it on councils, I see it on boards, just about everywhere, because they don't want to make that hard decision. And there's a lot of hard decisions coming down the pike right now.
So you're saying politicians are unwilling to act because they might do something unpopular?
That's it, and also because it's between a rock and a hard place. Where are you going to get the money? At the county level, what we're looking at in the next budget cycle, there will be a deficit, and it's only going to grow over the next 3 years. So are we going to continue to do things the same way, or are we going to look at new, innovative ways to do things? And you have to be open-minded to do that.
Where does the county get its money?
79% of it is our state-mandated programs,
And the state pays for them?
Yes, the state pays for them. That includes public health, mental health, public assistance, Department of Employment Services, those kinds of things. But that doesn't mean that just because those are state mandated that you just look the other way and don't look at how those programs are being effective. Are they effective? Is there a better way to coordinate? And my personal opinion is we could coordinate better at a county level, particularly on the homeless issue. And with our jurisdictions. We should be coordinating and be at the center of that as the county, because we have the most resources. It's just a matter of how they're deployed and what's going on. So I think that's a huge issue that nobody is really willing to take that and just say, we need leadership around that issue, is what I'm saying.
Do you want to add to that, Tami?
Well, the cities within the county they play a huge role, and so as Debra's talking about coordination, she's absolutely correct. And we have to make sure that we're all on the same page. The policies that the city of Chico passed that criminalize acts of living, things like the sit-lie and the protection of the waterways, those actually cost our county in actual dollars. Butte County received less money in our continuum of care because we have those kinds of policies on the books. We know that those policies don't work. We know that they are ineffective. We know that they cost our law enforcement both time and money, and yet our city council decided to pass them anyway. Perhaps, as you were saying, to placate the voters or to, not make people angry. Yeah, businesses, whoever's supporting their particular campaign or candidacy, and they don't work. So there's no reason to continue them, especially since they're costing us in actual dollars for money that we could spend on addressing the housing crisis we face.
For people who don't know who are listening, what's sit-lie?
Sit-lie is an ordinance that the city of Chico passed while I was on council, though I will say I did not vote for it, that makes it illegal to sit down or lie down on public property. So you cannot sit on a sidewalk, you may not store your belongings, you may not be blocking the flow of traffic with your body by sitting, leaning up against a building.
But there's no real enforcement either. So, on one hand, you have these, and that is also bothersome when you put a law on the books and then it's not being enforced anyway. So what have you accomplished? So I just think there are new and better ways to look at so many issues that we're facing. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, everything's going so quickly,
Right.
I was at a tourism conference and it was in Reading. And on the agenda was cannabis tourism. This is in Reading, okay? And we're talking about a very conservative area. The people that were coming from Trinity and Siskiyou and Modoc and Butte and Shasta and all of the northern counties. And yet we're discussing cannabis as a tourism industry. But here in Butte County, we have such restrictive laws about that. We don't have dispensaries here. I was just talking to a woman whose sister has cancer, and she has to drive to Shasta Lake to get her sister's medicine for her so that she's not nauseous because she's on all of these cancer drugs.
Right.
So I just, at some point, it's like we really need to, I always think that common sense has a lot to do with looking at things. And I think we have taken a lot of common sense out of government. It's not that difficult.
Do you want to take the Trump question? You were wanting to add something there, Kailyn.
Sure. Circling back to Mr. Trump and all that's been said and all that he chooses to say, I think a lot of it is he seems to have an issue with impulse control. I know that's a funny thing to say, but if we think about it, he is a very impulsive man.
That's true.
He says a lot of things on Twitter that gets him in trouble. He says a lot of things thinking that there aren't mics on behind closed doors that get him in trouble. And frankly, it's embarrassing because I don't feel that he represents me as an American very well, and I don't think that he represents the majority of America very well.
So what do you think about the 40%? That's what gnaws at me. Why does he get 40% support?
I think it does come back to some of it being with the taxes.
But he had that before the tax bill passed.
Yeah. I think some of it is that people may not necessarily like what he has to say, but they like that he says it. They like that he doesn't really care. He doesn't, mince his words. He just says what's on his mind, which for some people, I think it comes from what Debra was saying. We need more clarity and more transparency with our government. Having a person in power that says what they think rather than trying to code it sweetly and nicely is in some ways a breath of fresh air. It's not really, what he says isn't really the best, but it's the fact that he says it.
Well,
for
we
some
should
people,
hire a 12-year-old.
You're right. You're not wrong. It's simply that he just doesn't, like I said, he doesn't hold back. He says what he thinks. I personally don't agree with the majority of the things that he says. In regards to women, as a woman, I find a lot of what he says very offensive. What he says in regards to different minorities, I take special offense to things that he says about the Hispanic community. My boyfriend is Hispanic. His parents are immigrants. And they do not fit the description that he believes all Mexican people are. They are the sweetest, nicest people I've ever met, and it's very disheartening to think that there are people in the world that agree that that is what his family might be like. And so I think some of it comes down, there's a lot that feeds into why President Trump is the way he is. Some of it, I think, has to do with the way we choose to raise young men in our country.
That's a good point.
This idea that men are supposed to be hyper aggressive, this idea of toxic masculinity, I think, plays into it, and the idea that being sensitive towards others is feminine and therefore is bad.
Evan, do you want to piggyback on that?
Yeah.
You were nodding.
A lot of I just kicked it. Nothing happened. I think that a lot of the reasons some outrageous people are the way they are, specifically white men are the way they are, is because of things that society pushes on them, as well as the way that society tells their parents that they need to be raised and the ways that they are raised. We can look at people, the Columbine shooters, for example, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. They shot up Columbine because they were looking for revenge, and that's
because they were nerds and considered the unpopular guys. This was in 1999.
1999, yeah. The 19th anniversary is coming up, April 20th, and I watched multiple documentaries about why they did what they did, and it all stemmed from experiences they had and what they thought those experiences meant because of the way that they were brought up.
So they were outcast, uncool boys, so they shot up the school?
Not necessarily. They received messages that made them feel like they needed to have more power. They were in a power struggle. They did not feel like they were masculine enough. They felt that they had something that they needed to prove, and because of that, they did something really awful and terrifying. I think that it definitely, gun violence in particular, I think it goes down to white terrorism and definitely toxic masculinity.
Well,
that's what I've discovered from
this shooting in YouTube was the only time I know that a woman was a shooter.
I was so taken aback when I learned that it was a woman shooter. It's nothing I've ever heard of.
Sorry, go ahead.
I need to thank Ask Dr. Gale is made possible by the generous contributions of KCFR supporters and by Chico Certified Farmers Markets, presenting farmers markets throughout Butte County, Saturday in downtown Chico and also on Wednesday at North Valley Plaza in Chico. Details at chicofarmersmarket.com, connecting farmers and food lovers since 1980. And Ask Dr. Gale is brought to you by Hodges Nursery and Gifts on the Midway in Durham. Hodges Nursery covers 5 acres with a full-service nursery, growing a wide variety of landscape plants and trees for the home gardener. Hodges Nursery is located at 9681 on the Midway, offering vegetable starts and over 200 varieties of fruits and citrus trees. And by the way, they also have little places for kids to play and climb. More information by calling 894-6598. And they have a gardening newsletter, which I really enjoy. You can get it by going to hodgesnursery.com. Also, Hodges has workshops for free about how to take care of fruit trees and that kind of thing. So a reminder that you can call and pledge 895-0131. And reminder, the Science March is this Saturday, 10-11 at Chico State. What's the next event that's coming up in terms of Never Again? Is it there's a celebration or a commemoration of Columbine?
Yeah. So Evan mentioned earlier that the 20th of this month is the 19th anniversary of the Columbine shooting. We will be hosting a remembrance event. We're also hoping to have a discussion on mental health and how that plays into mass shootings, and also to honor the life of the young man that committed suicide on CSU campus. We're working on ironing out all of the details of that event, and once we have more things set in stone, we'll be posting all of that information to our Facebook page and to our Twitter. We also have
What are those pages called?
Okay, the Facebook page is Never Again. That's all one word. The N in Never and the first A and again are capitalized. Never Again Chico. And then our Twitter is Never Again CD1. So yeah, you can find all of that information there. We also will be meeting with the chief of police for Chico and asking him some questions about gun violence and its relation to the local communities.
Great. Debra, if someone wants to know more about your campaign, where can they find out about it, or if they have suggestions for you?
DebraLucero.us, and also Facebook page, Vote Debra Lucero, and it's DebraLucero.
And are you having another event in the near future that people might want to attend?
We are going to have a great event out at Scotty's on May 6th. There's going to be 3 bands, Big Mo and the Full Moon Band, John Seed, and also Sunday Iris. So if you want to come out and have a day of wonderful music by the river, that's on May 6th from 1 to 5 p.m.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And if people want to give you suggestions, can they just go to your website and
Yes.
say, this is really important for me, I want you to think about
Or on
this?
Facebook, Facebook, Vote Debra Lucero, and Twitter.
I would just like to share that Debra is great at responding on her Facebook. When we were planning the walkout, I couldn't find an email because I was rushed, and so I just messaged her Facebook page, and she got back to me within a day, and I was like, yes!
It makes things a lot easier. Tami, if people want to contact you, have a suggestion, want to help out,
So my Facebook page is Tami Ritter for Supervisor. My website is ritterforsupervisor.com. I have Twitter, I have Instagram, and I have an incredible young person named Alex Brown doing all of my social media because I don't know how to do some of that. And and we've got 100% response rate on the Facebook as well. So it's a great way to get in touch with us. If you want to email, it's info@ritterforsupervisor.com.
and are you having any events coming up that would be?
There is a
juicy?
list of events on my Facebook and on my website. There's something every Friday and Saturday from now until, I believe, May 6th.
How many opponents do you have?
2.
So are you going to win?
Sure.
Go Tami!
It would be nice if you both won and
It would be
Yes.
awesome.
could work together.
Let's
That
make
would
that
kind of
happen in June.
magnify.
That's what we're hoping. Yes.
Thank you for listening to Ask Dr. Gail. And a reminder, call the pledge, 895-0131. Only one more day to pledge. And thank you for our wonderful panel of Debra Lucero, Tami Ritter, Evan Evanson, and Kailyn Erb. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right.
And stay tuned for Peanut Butter and Jelly with Sandra. Woohoo!
Yay!